Delegations from almost 200 countries are arriving in Copenhagen for 2 weeks of talks aimed at establishing a new global treaty on climate change. They're looking for a political deal on curbing emissions and providing finance to help poorer countries. Among the delegations attending, the Canadian Inuit people who are calling for tough new emissions targets and additional funds to help their people as they struggle to adapt to global warming. Canada's national Inuit leader, Mary Simon, has been talking to our reporter Gilly Matheson about her people's struggle to be heard.
We speak, a lot of our sounds are in the throat.
Mary Simon represents the Inuit who live in the 53 Arctic communities in Canada. She's the guest of honour at Edinburgh University's St Andrew's Day celebrations. For Mary, the fiddle is a familiar sound.
I learned to play the accordion at a very young age, and I know all these Scottish tunes. I don't read the music, but I know them by heart, so I play them a lot.
Over the last 300 years, most of the young men that came to the Arctic were from Scotland. They worked as fur traders for the Hudson's Bay Company, the oldest trading business in the world.
A lot of those men stayed and married Inuit women. And we have families that have Scottish blood as well as Inuit. And there is a real kinship and connection between the two people.
During her childhood, Mary and her family hunted for food, travelled by dog team and lived in igloos. It was part of a traditional lifestyle that the Inuit say is now in danger as they struggle to cope with climate change.
In my region this winter, it's like 3 degrees. Usually it's like minus 25, minus 30. It got very cold in September. The ice froze to a level where people could go hunting and fishing and skidooing. It got really warm and it rained, and there's pockets of areas on the ice, on the lakes and the rivers where it's really thin, so people fall through the ice. Permafrost is melting, which is having an effect on the houses that people live in. Some of our buildings are starting to sink. The traditional lifestyle of our people, which we still depend on heavily for our food. We hunt and fish and gather during all 4 seasons, and this is being impacted by global climate change as well. Contaminants in the food chain has been very high, and that has a very bad impact on people because they depend on that food for their protein. We can't go to the grocery store and buy a pound of beef or a whole chicken. It doesn't exist in a lot of our communities, so people have to go out and hunt for their food. The very protein that makes you healthy becomes unhealthy.
Mary is in Scotland as the guest of the Canadian Studies Centre at Edinburgh University.
Things have to change. There has to be concrete, hard decisions made by world leaders.
She'll soon be heading to Copenhagen, where she'll be pushing for tough new emissions targets and an adaptation fund to help the Inuit deal with climate change.
This is about humankind and the effort that is needed by all countries to make hard choices and hard decisions. I've called for an adaptation fund that would include regions within developed nations, and I'm calling on a $20 billion fund initially that would increase over 5 years. We need resources to do all kinds of things, including fixing our houses and fixing our buildings.
The Inuit leader believes the Scottish Government has already set the standard for the Copenhagen talks, with its Climate Change Act to cut emissions by 42% by 2020.
I think Scotland should be applauded for their initiative. I think it's very difficult to come to grips with the level of reduction that Scotland is pushing for. And I think it's time that small Western nations really come to the forefront and really work together to call for this kind of change and take a leadership role in these kinds of talks. I feel like it's sort of coming home in a way.
Mary Simon hopes it's not just the love of Scottish music that will continue to tie the Inuit and Scots together. Her message to Scotland and to the delegations in Copenhagen is that only tough action now on climate change will preserve her people's habitat and way of life.